Thanks, Alan. All right, so I will sit here for just a minute. So I think all of you know me. This is so weird. So it's like, where do I look? So I think all of you know me. I'm Dave Dannenberg, Director of Academic Innovations and E-Learning. And I thank you all for coming today. I want to introduce Dr. Cable Green. He is the Director of Global Learning at Creative Commons. Creative Commons is the licensing organization behind making open educational resources content easily, freeably shared once a person decides to move it. And that's a horrible way to explain it, but Cable will do it better. I have listened to him for the last day and a half and have been absolutely amazed at what he's had to say and the number of possibilities that we have not only here at UAA, but within the UA system, but also statewide. So it's really exciting for him to spend some time with us. From here, he goes to speak with the government of New Zealand and then goes to a conference in Seoul. So it is really an honor and a pleasure to be able to share this time with him. Cable.
Thanks. Don't clap yet. I haven't said anything.
We're being appreciative of you being here.
Hi, everybody who's online. Online people, somebody type something in online. I want to see what pops up on my screen. Well, we're going to pay attention to your questions. Does it pop up? Over down where it says you or something? Oh, I got to open this, don't I? The chat. Now, okay, online people, the chat is open. I'm going to type in chat so you can see it. Click on the left side of your screen, mouse over on the left, and then up at the very top icon is the chat, and open it up. It works like any other Google Hangout. Okay, so several people in the room are in our workshop that we started this morning, and we're going to wrap up this afternoon. And we're working through some slides, which I may share some of them here, but I'm not going to go through the slides because I don't want to bore these poor people to death by showing them the same thing twice. This is also a more intimate group, and so I figured we could just talk a little bit, and I'll do a little bit of baselining to help everybody understand kind of what this is about, what's happening in the world, what the opportunities are, but mostly let's have a conversation. So ask questions. For the folks online, I'm going to repeat the questions just to make sure that they can hear them well, so that and we'll take questions from them as well. Sound fair enough? And Dave, give me a time check. How much time do we have?
You have an hour.
Okay, good. So first of all, thanks for the invite. It's a real honor to come up. My uncle's here, so it's nice to come see him. He's been up here since the 70s, and so I could stay with him, which is fun. Unfortunately, I can't stay and fish because as Dave said, I'm off to New Zealand. The government in New Zealand wants to talk about shifting to requiring open on publicly funded resources, which is great. A lot of governments are having that conversation. And we're also going to work with all of the K-12 teachers in New Zealand as they move to open educational resources. So what is all this stuff? What's going on? So I work at this global nonprofit called Creative Commons. Creative Commons is about 15 years old. And to understand Creative Commons, actually, if I want to share my screen, to do this, right? Screen share. Can I just share the desktop? And then I can, or should I share my PowerPoint? I'll do that, okay. How much do I want to share? I want to share everything. I'm all about sharing. Okay. So I'm just going to bounce around slides here. So did that work? It'll work. Hey, so I work at this place. We are a global nonprofit. 15 years old, and basically the reason that we had to be created is that the internet happened and everything that we use in education went digital. You may be thinking, I use paper textbooks in my class. Yes, you do, but it was printed from a digital file. And all the video that anybody ever shoots that you use, digital. All the audio is recorded and edited digitally. All the exams you use, digital, right? Everything we have is digital. And digital is real interesting. We'll share a couple of stats here. Digital looks like this. Doesn't look like that. Looks like this. So digital is interesting because you can store, distribute, and copy digital things for near zero cost. So it used to be really expensive to get a copy of the Gutenberg Bible, right? Monks had to write each copy by hand, took a long time, or you had to travel to a monastery or somewhere where you could get access to knowledge. That was a real drag for mass education. Then along comes the printing press, things got a lot better. But as you know, printing is not free. And distributing printed materials is not free either. And so for the past, really from now back to the printing press, the idea of making sure everybody in the world, for example, had copies of the best educational resources was frankly a silly idea, because it would have cost tens of billions of dollars to print and ship printed educational resources to everybody on the planet. So the United Nations and others that care about these things, like education for everybody, never ever even put it in their plans. And in fact, the United Nations has a list of human rights. They're very basic things, like the right to basic security and the right to not starve to death and the right to have a basic shelter over your head. I mean, these are really basic rights. They recently added the right to a higher education to that list. And the main reason was things are digital now. And we are over in this column of, with the internet, with digital stuff, we can make copies for thousandths of a cent. Now, to produce a high quality education resource, still very expensive, right? If you want to build, if you and I wanted to build a brand new degree program here at the university, you're probably talking about millions of dollars to build it. It's not trivial. If you and I just wanted to build a new textbook, you're probably talking north of $500,000, south of $1 million, but somewhere in that price range. It's not cheap. And that textbook we're going to want to keep up to date. And so you're probably talking about 25% of your original cost. So we spent $500,000 on the textbook. We're probably talking about 125 grand a year to keep it updated. So these are not free costs, but when that resource is digital, yes, we spent $500,000 building that textbook. Yes, we spend 125 a year keeping that textbook up to date. But if we choose to, we can put that digital file on the web and we share with everybody on the planet at near speeds of light for the marginal cost of zero. Okay, so because of the internet and things being digital, these are the economics of digital things. So I want you to set aside, yeah, but that doesn't work with existing business models and any concerns you might have. Set that aside for just a minute. The possibility is there today, because of things being digital on the internet, to share music with everybody, to share movies with everybody, documentary films, educational resources, data sets that governments produce about crime statistics or education or whatever. You can share all this stuff for near zero cost. So that's the technical possibilities of where we live today. And educators for the past 10, 15 years have been asking, if I can share educational resources at the marginal cost of zero, should I? A lot of educators, tens of thousands of educators around the world, have said, not only, yes, I should, but I have a moral and ethical obligation as an educator to educate as many people as I can. So we were just, what's your name? I'm sorry. Libby. So I was just talking with Libby, my new environmental activist friend on climate change. And Libby says to me, hey, I'm real passionate about educating people about climate change and the effects of climate change, right? Under the old printing press model, Libby would have to figure out, how am I going to pay for and print, posters and pamphlets and educational resources and you name it, documentary films. These are all very expensive propositions, and not just the original, but I've got to pay for each copy and figure out how to get it to people, and mailing costs are high, et cetera. In today's world, Libby can create the resources once and distribute them at the marginal cost of zero. So the power there is immense, and not to overstate it, but it's the first time in human history we've ever had that kind of capability for distributing knowledge. And so about 10 years ago or so, educators started to say, yeah, we should start to share. And musicians started to share in new ways. And data scientists started to share. In fact, the whole discipline of scientific research writ large has been radically changed because of digital. And it's being changed in some major ways. One is that academic research is more and more being either by the choice of the faculty or by the choice of the funder is becoming open access research. So you've probably heard of open access research. These are journals that anybody in the world can access, and they have different business models than traditional subscription-based journals. The other radical thing that's happening right now in academic research is we've always been used to reading the article and then citing that article and learning from it. But very rarely do we ever get access to the data, the original data set that the researchers used. And more often than not, when one researcher asks another researcher for the data set on the article, the answer is no. And they're under no obligation to share legally. And that upsets researchers because now it's very difficult for me to replicate your study and analyze your data, et cetera. More and more researchers are shifting on that, and they're saying because we can share the data sets at the marginal cost of zero, and if we really want to cure cancer, probably should share the data. You really want to convince people that climate change is happening and it's real, people aren't going to just buy the article on that. They want to see the data, right? And so we're really in this kind of radical transformative stage in science. And it's being shared at the speed of light in open access journals that everybody can read with data sets along with it. So if you want to see what cutting edge looks like, go look at the Public Library of Science. They're starting to do both these things. The articles are licensed under a CC BY license, a Creative Commons Attribution license. The data sets more and more are there with the articles, and the access is free. And their business model is a post-publication fee. So you submit, it's peer reviewed. Whether or not your article gets in is based on the quality of the article and how good the research is, just like any other journal. And then when you're accepted, it's a gold access fee. You have to pay the journal a fee, and libraries pick up that cost, whereas libraries used to pay for a high subscription. So we're this moment in history, and so the question that we're asking as educators is, when copying, distribution, and storage becomes free, which it has, what do we do with that? What do we do with that knowledge as educators? And so, as we say, what the internet is enabling, so the internet makes it really easy to access digital stuff, right, in a way we never could before. Copyright, which is the law that protects original intellectual property, forbids all of the things that the internet enables. So what the internet enables is mass copying, mass distribution. So everybody remember Napster, when your students here at the university were sharing files illegally? It was really easy to share music. Was it legal? No. Why? Copyright law. There's nothing wrong with copyright law. If you're the author of a work, you're the original creator, your work should be protected. That's a good thing. And if you don't want to share your work, nobody should force you to share your work. That's fine. If you want to commercialize your work, that's fine. More and more people, though, because of the internet and the affordances of digital things and Creative Commons licensing, which I'll talk about next, more people want to share, but copyright makes it hard. And so and if I don't have my own personal lawyer, what do I do? So that's what Creative Commons is. So I'll bounce ahead a little bit. Here's a little bit about us. We're a nonprofit. We operate in really every country on the planet, but we actually have teams of people in 85 countries around the world. I happen to live in the United States, but I mean, my boss is Canadian. He lives in Toronto. The people I work with most are in Nairobi, Johannesburg, Cape Town, British Columbia. They're all over the place because this is a global phenomenon. Everybody can play with the internet. Now, we still have digital divide issues, but there are massive open educational resource projects in Africa where there's no internet. We print it, or we put it on DVDs and we ship it out on camels sometimes to get the knowledge out to where people need it. There's actually a really cool project in the University of Michigan, which has Open Michigan. It's a massive open educational resources project. And Michigan's medical school, which is a great, am I not broadcasting? It's a great medical school, has a partnership with the medical colleges in Africa, who really want the medical curriculum that Michigan is producing. It's top-notch medical school curriculum. They put it up and license on it, make it open and free. And in return, what the African doctors are doing is teaching the Midwest doctors about tropical diseases and malaria and tuberculosis, thing that the Michigan doctors see every once in a while because we're a globalized world and international travel. They have no expertise. So when a malaria case pops up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to diagnose it, so the African doctors are teaching them to return. So Creative Commons exists because you got these two extremes and there was nothing in between. So on one extreme, when you create something, it's automatically copyrighted. You don't have to register with the Copyright Office. You don't have to put a little C in a circle on the thing. That all went out in 1978, I think, where you don't have to do that anymore. It's automatic. And this is true in every country in the world. And so that's good. Your rights are protected. But what if you're one of these educators who wants to share with others at the marginal cost of zero? The old answer was, go get yourself an attorney and write a license for whoever you want to share with. In the same way that when J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter series and Warner Brothers called her up and said, I want to make a movie out of that, it's against copyright law for Warner Brothers to just take her book and make the movie. She had to get her lawyers to write a license to Warner Brothers so that they could do that thing that they wanted to do. And they paid her a lot of money for it, of course. Okay, so if you want to give people the legal permissions to do all this cool stuff that the internet and digital things let us do, you have to give them a license. Or you have to get your work out of copyright and into the public domain. So there's two ways to do the latter. You can get your work out of copyright and into the public domain. The first one is highly unpleasant. You have to die, and then 70 years have to go by. And the United States right now is working on adding another 20 years to that because apparently you being dead in 70 years isn't enough. They want you dead for 90 years before your work's going to the public domain. So that's how your work goes into the public domain. I mean, I don't know about you, but I kind of like to share while I'm alive. The other way to get your work in the public domain, we actually have a tool called a public domain dedication. It's called CC0, which you can give up your copyright, stick it in the public domain today. It's a legal way to do it. Most faculty don't want to give up their copyright. They want to keep their copyright, and they want to give people a license. So I want to give you and you and you and the rest of the planet a license to use my work that I own under the terms and conditions that I choose. Makes sense, right? And Creative Commons simply said, we need to make that really, really simple. Got to get the lawyers out of this, put the lawyers in the background. We have to empower everybody on the planet to share when they want to share freely and simply so that people can get on with whatever it is they want to do. If I'm a musician and I've laid down a really nice bass track and I want other musicians around the world to pick up my bass track, I don't want to lawyer up. I just want to share the darn music. I want to keep my copyright on it, and I want other musicians to grab it and use it. And educators are increasingly saying the same thing. So there's different options, as you can see here. I'll let you fix this.
Yep, sorry.
So no worries. No worries. This is fine. Whatever you need to do.
This screen and not PowerPoint.
So all of our licenses require attribution. We understand that in the academy. You use somebody's stuff, you give them credit, right? We cite people. That's all attribution is.
You may have to stop. Sorry, you may need to stop this one and then share the presentation.
Yeah, it's not doing like. Okay.
Share like simply means if you use my.
Don't look at me.
Share like says if you use my stuff and you modify it, you have to share your stuff forward under the same terms that I shared my stuff under. So you took my open textbook, it has a share like license, to change it, you got to share your new chapter 2 under the same terms. That's what Wikipedia does. Everything on Wikipedia is under an attribution share like license. Non-commercial says you can use my work, you can't sell it. And no derivative says you can use my work, you can't change it. In education, we stay away from the no derivatives licenses like the plague because educators change stuff, right? So if I said to you, here's a great textbook for your course, you can't change a single word in it. What are the odds you're going to use that textbook?
Not much.
Now, you say not much, but you do it all the time because you take textbooks from Pearson and McGraw-Hill and everybody else, and that's exactly what you do, right? So the difference with open educational resources is we're actually empowering faculty to be the professionals that they are, which is to modify and update knowledge and remix to meet the specific needs of the students in their class. And because it has a Creative Commons license on it, it also happens to be free, no cost. So you get different licenses. You choose the one that works for you. When I say most free to least free, I'm not talking about cost. This is all no cost. The licensing is a global standard open copyright licenses. There's over 1 billion of them and growing fast on the web, and they don't cost anything. Our whole reason for existence is just to make sharing legal and simple. That's why we exist. If copyright law went away tomorrow, Creative Commons would close up shop. There'd be no need for us. But because there's very restrictive copyright and it's hard to share stuff in the copyright regime that exists internationally, we need to continue to exist so people can share. So what we do as educators is we try to stay as close to the top of this list of licenses as we can get. At the very top, the most open is public domain. And then Creative Commons attribution, and then attribution share alike. So by is attribution. This book is by Cable Green. That's the attribution statement. Non-commercial. You can essentially, as you add more restrictions on other people, you're taking away the flexibility for them to do stuff with your work. It also takes away their ability to remix works because, for example, you can't remix Wikipedia articles, which is under this license, with all of MIT's curriculum, which is under this license. Why? Because this license has share alike and so does that one. And if you mix these two things together, the derivative work, the new work you made, the MIT stuff says you got to be this license, and the Wikipedia says you got to be this license, which is impossible because they're two different licenses. And so that's unfortunate. What you can do is you can take part of a Wikipedia article, stick it in your course. That's legal. Give attribution. You could take part of an MIT course, stick it in your course. That's legal. Give proper attribution. But you have to leave those things as kind of two distinct units and mark them with the right license. What would be illegal to do is to, let's say that there is a course at MIT on nuclear physics, right? So I want to update my course in nuclear physics at MIT. It just so happens that new research just came out on nuclear physics that got updated right away in Wikipedia because that's what people do. And the Wikipedia article is more up to date than my MIT physics course. And I want to take that article and mash it in, remix with my MIT physics course. The moment I remix it like that, and I can't tell where one starts and the other one begins, I just violated the licenses. So in education, we try to stay away from those dilemmas by licensing the most permissive way we can. So more and more educators are using the Creative Commons attribution license or the BISA license. But we maintain all these licenses and you use the one that you want to use. If we didn't want you to use them, we wouldn't have them. We wouldn't offer them. Okay, there's lots of licenses out there. People around the world are using them. We were talking this morning. Actually, let me just hop to a slide here. Well, there's a couple of things I want to show. Here's a good example. This is a project out of Rice University at Texas. It's called OpenStax College. These guys spend a lot of money building professional textbooks for your highest enrolled courses. So at this university, you all teach every single one of those courses up there, right? You all teach sociology, physics, anatomy and physiology, micro and macro econ. And you don't just teach these courses. Every university on the planet teaches all these courses, and so do all of the community colleges and technical colleges in the world. And so these guys, backed by foundations who are throwing literally millions of dollars at them, a professor, an engineering professor at Rice University one day, about 10 years ago, said, this is unacceptable. It is unacceptable that roughly 2/3 of the students that are walking into our classes are not buying all the resources the faculty have assigned because the textbooks are too expensive. And the students feel like they're getting ripped off and they're tired of going back to the bookstore and getting 10 cents on the dollar. And they're just not buying the books. And I'm upset as a faculty member because I got students in my class who can't learn because they don't have the resources that I've designed for them to be successful in my class. I've had it. And so he set up something called Connections, which is a big repository to share OER. And there are hundreds of thousands of OER in that repository, and that's really good. But he wasn't seeing the change that he wanted. He wasn't seeing kind of wholesale change. They still had students that weren't buying the textbooks because, like it or not, a lot of us still use textbooks in our classes. And so he said, well, fine, let's go right at the problem. And so these guys are building the textbooks. Every one of those books is free. Every one of those books has a Creative Commons attribution license. You can download them this afternoon. If you don't like them, change them. Modify them. They have a CC BY license on them. They give you the editable files, download them to your computer, check what you don't want, take what you want. All you have to do is give attribution. Are they free to build? Absolutely not. They cost $600,000-$700,000, some of them they spend in north of $100,000 a year to keep them all updated. Who are they hiring? They're hiring you guys. They're finding the best faculty in the United States who teach statistics. They're hiring those people. And then they're putting editorial teams with them and graphic designers and everybody that you would want in a professional publishing scheme to be involved. And they're giving the books away.
So who's funding that?
In this project, Hewlett Foundation, Arnold Foundation, Gates Foundation, 20 Million Minds Foundation. It's foundations.
Nice.
Rice University supports all the staff. Why does Rice do it? Because Rice is an educational institution, and they believe that it's really stupid that 2/3 of Rice students walks into class and don't have textbooks that were assigned. And Rice is a little bit pissed off. And so Rice supports 3 or 4 staff to work on it.
Nice.
It's the iPad owners who are behind this.
The iPad owners. Well, actually, these books will, to be very clear, OER doesn't have to be digital. It can be print, right? So we know from surveys, so I'll give you US numbers. In the United States, when you ask students, what do you want? Ebooks, print, 75% of students in the US in undergrad say that they want a print as an option. They don't always buy print, but they really want it there as an option because some of them do want it. And they want it because it feels good and they're writing margins and they're used to it. And just, they like sticking it on their shelf and make it part of their library. That's fine. OpenStax said, no problem. We'll make it easy to work with your bookstore here at Anchorage. These things have ISBN numbers on them. Your bookstore can order them. They pull down the files. OpenStax doesn't charge anything. It's got a free open license on it. And your bookstore can print them out. And it costs about $30 to print a color, nice, pretty bounded copy of one of these. $30 is not free. $30 is probably a lot less than what your current textbook costs. Right? So what students really want is they want all the digital versions for free for whatever device they might have. iPads, Kindles, laptops, you name it. And it works on all of them. And students want a print option if they want it. And then the students will choose to buy it or not. Yeah.
So typically with that, then the bookstore doesn't actually print it unless a student walks in and says, I want to buy this. Is that correct? And that's how they avoid spending the money that doesn't get purchased?
Yeah, so it's called print on demand.
Okay.
So a lot of bookstores have what are called espresso machines. They're pretty expensive. They're like $100,000, but they're pretty cool too because you can just print one copy at a time.
Right.
So students come in and say, I'd like, my professor assigned me that OpenStax book, but it's been modified for Anchorage. So it's got and we put a new cover on it, etc. I was told to come in and buy it, and the bookstore will say, okay, that'll be, $8.56. Come back in 10 minutes.
Okay.
So go get a coffee. Come back in 10 minutes, your book will be ready. And they print on demand. Go ahead.
It could cost more than the coffee.
Yes.
If you want print. So yeah, print's not free. And more students, are price sensitive. So I worked in community colleges in Washington State for just over 4 years. I had a lot of students that couldn't afford the $30 book. These are people that had no discretionary income, and the cost of a textbook was enough to throw them out of the second class that they wanted to pay because they couldn't afford the tuition for class number 2. And so some of the really interesting things we see when a class moves to OER is we see all sorts of really positive metrics happen. One thing is you just took the cost of textbooks to 0. So students are happy, so satisfaction goes up. Faculty satisfaction also goes up because the faculty for the first time in their career have had legal rights to do whatever they wanted to do with all of the content in their class. And I don't know about you, but when I was faculty at Ohio State, the way that I remixed is I would assign 7 books for my class. And I would say, read chapter 2 out of that one and chapter 3, 4, and 6 out of this one, but not in that order, read them in a different order. The students were mad because they're like, why did you make me buy the whole book if you're only going to make me read one chapter? Well, with OER, you don't have to do that garbage, right? If you want chapter 6 out of that open textbook, you just take chapter 6, you stick it in your Blackboard course, or you make it chapter 1 in your course pack that you're going to print out at the bookstore. So now with OER as faculty, you can give students just what you want students to have and not what you don't want them to have. That's very satisfying as a faculty member. It's also satisfying as a faculty member to look at a resource, an educational resource, and say, that's not quite right. And to be able to do something about it. Because today, when you say, that's not really right, and you got a Pearson textbook or a McGraw-Hill textbook, you can call up your rep if you want to. And they'll probably say, oh, sure, yeah, no problem. Here's the form to get that fixed. And do they fix it for you immediately? No. Do they fix it for you even in the next edition?
Never.
Very rarely. Why not?
Because it's expensive. It takes time.
It's expensive. It takes time. It's also because, no disrespect, you don't matter to them. You're Alaska. You're a tiny market. You matter to them least of any other state in this country. You don't matter. My state doesn't matter either. I live in Washington. We have 7 big universities, much larger than your universities up here. We don't matter either. California matters. Texas matters. New York matters. The East Coast, where all the Ivies are, they matter because they want the prestige. But we don't matter. Neither do you. And with OER, you don't have to put up with any of that garbage. You want to update something? Update it. Right? New research came out that you read in the New York Times this morning? Update it. Put it in your course. Right? So there's a high level of satisfaction. The other, those are nice. The perceptions are nice. And I'll show you a couple studies real quick. The other thing that happens are really tangible, extremely positive things. One is that because when you take the textbook cost to 0 in your class, you no longer have, and your provost told me that it wasn't 2/3 yesterday. He said the number is closer to 75% of your students are walking into class without all of the resources that you as faculty have assigned. You've all had that experience, right? Where students didn't buy the book that you assigned. And that's not, you don't feel good about that because you know they're not going to be as successful. How could they be? You purposefully assigned the content so that they could learn. And if they don't have the content, what do you think is going to happen? So the very first thing that happens when you take textbook cost to 0 is 100% of your students on day 1 have 100% of the resources that you designed for the class. Okay, so that's good. The other thing that happens is they don't have the resources on day 1. More and more faculty give it to them before day 1. So you know who signed up, or the registrar's office knows who signed up. Faculty who moved their courses to OER are sending emails to the students, say, hey, welcome to calculus. Glad you could be in my class this quarter. By the way, our textbook is an open textbook. You may not know what that means, but it's free. And here it is, if you want to take a look at it before you even start class. Right, so that's good. Because students have all the resources, student success goes up in OER classes, right? Because they have the resources. This is fairly fall off a log simple stuff. What we see when you actually track pre and post in peer-reviewed studies, and I'll show you these in a sec, we see marginal increases from a Pearson textbook to the OER open textbook. And when I say marginal, they tend to be right around 4 to 8% increases in student success. So that's good. It's not a huge deal, but it's good. But I want you to remember that you went from a $150 textbook to 0, and you got marginal increases, right? So pay less, get more, good. We'll take that all day long. The other thing that happens is you get higher course completion rates. Why? Well, because students have the resources they need to be successful. They're less likely to drop out because their confidence in their ability to succeed goes up, because you've told them as a faculty member, you've got everything you need to succeed. No more of this not having your resources. And I, the faculty member, am really charged up and excited and passionate because I made sure that this course is exactly what you need to be successful. I organized it, I updated it, I reviewed it, right? As opposed to, here's that 12th edition Pearson book. I'm really sorry it's packaged with a DVD that we're not going to use that you have to pay for. Right? It's a much more positive message. The other thing that happens is institutions make more tuition money. And so this is especially true when there's marginal tuition where each class they take, students pay for, and I understand that's how it is here at Anchorage. Right. So each credit they take, they pay for. If they used to take 2 courses, and on average their textbooks were $150 per course, which is kind of the average of the cost of the highest enrolled textbooks, and now you took $300 out of their budget, can they afford to take a 3rd class? Can they afford tuition for that? The answer in community college is an overwhelming yes. Students are taking 1 extra course. That reduces time to degree. So to the extent that universities, I mean, you care, I understand that you've got a large commuter population here. You've got a lot of part-time students here, a lot of non-traditional age students here, and you've got students that sometimes take a long time to finish their degree. Wouldn't it be nice if they were all taking 1 more course each semester than they take now because they can afford to the extent that money is an issue for them. So that's a positive thing. And then that generates more tuition, good for the institution. I understand you're also in a bit of a budget crisis right now in your state. That can be a positive thing to generate more tuition dollars. So all these good things happen. This is one example of a big move that an institution made recently. This is UMUC, one of the biggest institutions in Maryland. They have 60,000 undergraduate students, about 18,000 graduate students in master's and PhD and other professional programs. I was out there a couple of years ago and I said, we were having this type of conversation. I said, OER, and they said, what should we do? I said, well, you should think big. You should do a data run, find out what your top 15 highest enrolled courses are, and provide some incentive money, release time for faculty, support for faculty who want to take those courses to open, and have your 15 highest enrolled courses. And they're like, nah, it's not big enough. I said, all right, we'll do top 50. Still not big enough. All right, do a whole degree program. No, I think it bigger. And I said, I'm at a loss. What do you want to do? They said, we're just going to do everything. And so they did. And so now UMUC is, it's not all OER. They're moving that direction. Most of it's OER, where they had, in some cases, they cut some deals with traditional publishers to get really low-cost resources, like sub $30 resources. That's good. It's not free. It's not open, so the faculty don't have the legal rights to modify it, but still better than it was. And they are using a lot of their library resources that the library is already licensed. That's also good, but the faculty, again, don't have the legal rights to modify the library resources because it's all rights reserved copyright license from somebody else. And they recognize those limitations. And so they're slowly moving all the resources to OER. But now UMUC is going to change all its billboards as you drive north out of Washington, D.C. Their old billboards said, come to UMUC, online learning options for all of our degrees, meet your busy work and family schedule, right? That was their competitive edge in Maryland and in the region, was we got the best flexibility through online learning for you, student. Well, when I was there 2 years ago, they said, everybody does online learning now. It's not a competitive advantage anymore. It's no longer a marketing edge for us. They said our new billboards are going to say, come to UMUC, textbooks equals 0. And
That's a new concept for sure.
they said we're going to beat everybody else and get a whole lot more students because students don't want to pay textbook costs. And I said, fine, you know, that's good, but that's not the real reason to move to OER. And they're actually now pushing the envelope even further. So everything I've said about content and let's make content free and you should share it because you're educators and education's about sharing, that's all true. But content is really just infrastructure that we use in education, in the same way that the national highway system is really important infrastructure for commerce. It's very difficult to have interstate commerce without highways or without airports, right? These are important bits of infrastructure. Content is really important infrastructure for teaching and learning, no question. It'd be difficult to teach a course without any content at all. So we need that, but that's not really the exciting part about open educational resources. The really interesting work is in open pedagogy or open practices in teaching and learning. So what educators are starting to do, both in K-12 and in higher education around the world, is they're saying, look, I've moved my course to OER. I've dumped my old textbook. I've got an open textbook in my class. That's all good. Like, I love all the outcomes. All my students have the resources. I reduce student debt. Students can take more classes, reducing time to degree. It's all good. But what can I do with open content that I couldn't do as a faculty member with closed content? And so one of the things, am I going to screw this up if I go like this? I might do it anyway, so. So let me see here. Can I just go full screen or not? I tried to do full desktop and somebody yelled, no. It was him. Let's blame Dave.
Oh, hey.
Okay.
I can be blamed for a lot of things, but I think I was safely out of that position.
My little face on here, I don't want that. Okay, desktop.
Desktop. Hey, here we go. Okay, sorry everybody.
Ooh,
Okay.
look at that.
Nice.
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, is that everyone?
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, there you go. You know how to make that work, right?
Okay. So people started asking this question. What can I do as a faculty member when all my stuff's open that I couldn't do when it was closed, right? That's the right question to be asking. So yeah, I took textbook costs to 0. That's low-hanging fruit. I mean, I know that's hard. It's going to take some work, and it's going to take Anchorage years to get there where all your courses have open textbooks, and you should do what UMUC did. This is the direction people are going. But that's the low-hanging fruit. The real interesting work is this. What can you do pedagogically in your class when things are open as opposed to not? So I always start with, what do you do now? So my friend David Wiley calls these disposable assignments. we all hand out disposable assignments. A disposable assignment is, here's my syllabus, here's what you need to get your A. You're going to do some work in my class. You might work in groups, collaboratively, you might work alone, but you're going to do work. And then when you're done with that work, you're going to turn it into me, the professor. I'm going to grade that work, and I'm going to give it back to you. And after I give it back to you and you get your grade, what are we both going to do with that assignment? I'm going to throw it away. You're going to throw it away. I mean, maybe you save the file on your computer, but I'm not really going to keep using it, right? I want my A, and I'm going to move on. We call those disposable assignments. Students hate doing them. Why? Because I haven't done anything to contribute to the world. I haven't solved any problems. It wasn't really an authentic task. I'm upset that I did this work and it just didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So I don't like doing those. Faculty don't like grading them because, I mean, you've all had big stacks to grade and knowing that you're just going to move on to the next thing. That's a drag, right? It's a huge waste of time and energy. Renewable assignments, as David calls them, are what you can do with open. So I want you to think, so faculty, raise your hands. I'm going to pick on somebody. She put her hand back down. She's like, yes, no. What's your name? Pat. My mother's name is Pat.
Oh, good news.
I didn't have the camera ready. Wait.
Pat, what do you teach? Nursing. Pat teaches nursing. Okay, great. So Pat teaches nursing. She used to have what do you teach in nursing?
I teach the fundamentals.
Fundamentals nursing. All right.
Skills and stuff like that.
Okay. So she used to teach fundamentals of nursing skills with this, whatever, National Hospital Association, Pearson created textbook, National Nurse Association. Elsevier. Oh, good God. Don't get me started on Elsevier. Oh, boy. You want to see blood vessels blow in my head. So under the old model, Pat issued these assignments, right? And there were labs and people had to demonstrate their skills. It's all good. People were learning to be nurses. Under the new model, though, when people walk into Pat's class, Pat says, tell you what, here's what you're going to learn in this class. It's a lot. It's going to be hard. For the first half of this semester, you're going to do a lot of reading. You're going to do a lot of writing. It's going to be a very traditional class like you've always taken and like I've always taught. There's a lot of base fundamental knowledge you're going to have. In the second half of the class, though, after I bring you up to speed on a lot of these things, you, the students in my class, are actually going to, as your assignment is going to be to improve the curriculum, right? And so you are going to update. So you, my student in my nursing class, there's new research that just came out about better ways to place IVs. Here are the 3 research studies on that. You go research those, you read those, you contact the scholars and you get their data and you find out if they're legit studies or not. I want you to know what the field thinks about those new techniques, because I want to teach new techniques that aren't any good. And so you, as a student, remember, you're going to go research those and then you're going to update chapter 2 after you confirm and you validate whether or not the research is good or not. And I want you to properly cite those studies using ALA or AMA or whatever you use, right? APA, there you go. And so I've just given this student an assignment to update a textbook and to go out and do original research and then to come back and teach the other students in the class about this new research. And Pat says, by the way, this isn't just going to affect our class. This is an update that's going to affect next semester students that are coming in. And so now as a student, she's thinking, oh boy, like I better really do a good job because this matters. I'm going to update Pat's textbook. And then Pat says, oh, by the way, this textbook has a Creative Commons license on it. You may not care what that means. What that means is that everybody else in the world who teaches nursing, I put the book up on the website. You know how y'all didn't have to pay for it? The rest of the world can download this, and I'm going to the National Nursing Association's convention next week in Philadelphia, and I'm going to stand up on stage and I'm going to say, hey, does anybody need a Fundamentals of Nursing textbook? My students help update this every quarter, so it's the most up-to-date textbook in the world. Latest research is in there. If anybody wants to use it, it's freely available. Here's the URL. It's under a Creative Commons license. By the way, anybody else in the world, if you use this and make it better, please send me a note. Let me know, because we'd love to see your innovations on our textbook as well. And she tells her students this, and now they're thinking, oh, good Lord. Right? Now, though, you just set the bar up here. Yeah. And as we know from reading John Dewey and others and Bandura and others that study and taught us about learning theory, when you set the bar up there, students rise to that challenge, especially when it's a renewable assignment, when it matters. Where this gets really fun, and when you were talking about climate change, this is where my head was going, where it gets really fun is where you're dealing with current issues that are complex global problems that need solving. So today, the complex global problems that are in our face right now, every night on the news, global warming, water scarcity, clean water scarcity, certainly refugee crises, the ability for political science around controlling one's borders in a union of states is a rather interesting topic of the day, right? And so what's starting to happen is the United Nations, and I recently worked at the White House, we created something called OER Grand Challenges. They picked some of these topics. And the question that the White House was asking was, if we want more scholars in climate change and dedicating their careers to that, and we want the best and brightest graduate students in this country working on climate change topics, how are we going to get there? And the White House concluded the best way to get there was to make all that curriculum open educational resources. And they were going to give tens of millions of dollars to educational institutions in the United States, universities, to build that curriculum on the condition it was under a Creative Commons attribution license. So if you want this money, you're going to share what you build. You don't agree to share, you can't have the money. And the reason that the White House wants to force sharing under a CC BY license is they want, even though Ohio State is building the program on clean water and scarcity of clean water, they want Louisiana to be able to download it and take it without paying Ohio State high licensing fees. And they want Anchorage to be able to just download it and take it and modify it to meet your needs and put in examples of what's happening in Barrow, right? That Florida doesn't really care about Barrow, but Florida's got its own problems about losing its beaches. Yeah, go ahead.
I like that, but let's suppose you have one of these stacks things and you say, this is perfect for Alaska. You modify it and you modify it again and you modify it again. But somebody else in Canada is also modifying that book and they modified. You're not reading theirs, right? At some point, you lose the basic text somewhere because now you're 5-6 generations down and you have parochially, I don't know, you focused on your own additions to that, but you've missed perhaps other changes that could have occurred in other domains within that textbook. And now it would be not, that's why if you get version 1, version 2, version 3 of the professional textbook or the commercial one, somebody has kept that up to date across a wider domain than my narrow interest for Anchorage, for example. So how do you solve that particular genetic problem almost?
So there are two ways that the OER community is solving that problem. First is what we do at Creative Commons. So in the licenses, this is actually an update to our latest version of the licenses. So think about software, new versions of software come out all the time. Legal tools are the same way. So our licenses, which are legal tools, are updated about every 3 years or so, because copyright laws change around the world all the time. Governments tweak copyright, new international conventions get signed around copyright, and our licenses need to be updated. The latest version of our licenses are version 4, and in the license, it requires you to say what you changed in the attribution statement. So if you download one of those OpenStax textbooks that has a Creative Commons attribution license on it, and you take out chapter 2, and you write a new chapter 2, in your attribution statement here at Anchorage, you have to say, this book, Intro to Statistics, by OpenStax College, and I'm going to link Intro to Statistics to the page for the original book, not your version, the original, by OpenStax College, that's linked to OpenStax homepage, is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 license. So that's the attribution statement for giving credit to the original. And anybody who's looking at your book, where you tore out chapters 7, 8, 9 and replace those, I can still go back to the original because that's in your attribution statement. And in the attribution statement, you have to say, it's a legal requirement, you have to say, I replaced chapters 7, 8, and 9.
Where do I find somebody in Canada who took out chapter 2 and wrote another chapter that I wish I would have seen at OpenStax?
So the answer today, unfortunately, is not a very satisfying answer that I can give you, but I'll tell you what people do. And then I'll tell you what we're doing to make it a better answer. So what I want you to have, let's use OpenStax. What I want OpenStax to have is I want them to have a nice little data dashboard where they can call up and say, show me what's happened to intro to statistics. And they can actually see, oh, it's been downloaded in 56 countries and it's been translated in 7 languages. And these derivative works have been made. They can actually see the genealogy of the book. The provenance of it is what we call it. And they can actually go and click right there and go and see that version 13 that Vermont just updated. We're building that into the licenses right now. It's not done. I'm sorry to say. We're working on it with Seneca College right now in Toronto, and we're making some good progress. What people do today is what OpenStax does today is they use Google Analytics to see where the link backs are coming from. So because it's a legal requirement when you use OpenStax to give attribution to them, even if because you've linked back to their original book as a requirement in your attribution statement, they can see that link. And so they can actually see the IP address on the server at the University of Anchorage, and they know that somebody at Anchorage has posted their book and is linked back to them.
Could I suggest that modules might replace total textbooks that are very comprehensive and cover such a wide range of things?
Yeah.
That modules could be about giving a shot to people who are already in the hospital. Right? I'm just making up something, right?
Sure.
All right. Well, that's the only thing there is, and you don't have a lot of other stuff. So I shop for modules, and I put modules for giving shots in nursing and schools and with great kids, and I don't know, a bunch of other things, and into oranges.
Yeah. So it's an excellent point. Let me bring up a new window here so we don't fall into infinity.
Just so you know, we have about 15 minutes.
Okay. So when one decides to build a new educational resource, modularity and building in chunks is a big part of the discussion. As you think about not only how do learners best consume content and learn it. We know from learning science that learners, that you don't want anybody sitting for more than about 45 minutes, and people actually learn best in about 7-minute chunks. That's why TED Talks are 7 minutes long. TED's very specific about that. Everybody's seen TED Talks, right? They're on average 7 minutes, and that's because that's the attention span of even most adults when they're trying to learn something. You go much beyond that, and they fog out. And so our hour-and-a-half long classes, not so great. So when you're thinking about designing, learning modules and video, a good rule of thumb is never north of 7 minutes. When we were, let me show you a project here. This is at skillscommons.org. So this is just a bit of background on this. So I mentioned that the rules on money are changing in the world. What I mean by that is governments and foundations are starting to require Creative Commons licenses on what they fund. So the U.S. Department of Labor, which is what this project is, skillscommons.org, U.S. Department of Labor gave out $2 billion, so billion with a B, we're talking about big money here, to U.S. community colleges and universities to build new academic programs to retrain Americans and put them back to work post-2008 economic crisis. So $2 billion went out. And the requirement on all that money was whatever you build or revise must have a Creative Commons attribution license on it. You don't like those terms? It's okay. Don't take the money. Guess how many community colleges turned down $20 million grants? Not a one, right? They all took the money. And so all that content, as it's being finished, is being put up here at skillscommons.org. So there's one place to go to look for all that workforce development curriculum. And these are entire degree programs. To your point, we're a technical assistance provider for these guys. So because everything is required to have a Creative Commons license on it, I raised my hand when I learned about this grant and said, do people even know how to put a Creative Commons license on stuff? Like, I don't think they do. Somebody better show them how to do that, or you're gonna have $2 billion of all rights reserved copyright content, which would be not good, given that you want people to share it. And so we also said, look, don't let them build big chunks, because big chunks are harder to remix than small chunks. So think about Legos. I don't know, anybody have kids? I got kids, big Lego piles, right? You think about a Lego, it's a very small piece. And my kids throw away the instructions the moment they get a new Lego set, and they innovate, they create new spaceships and stuff with the little pieces, because the smaller chunks allow for more innovation and more remix, right, at a faster rate. and they're more creative with it. Same thing is true with educational resources. So when we work now, the community colleges didn't all listen and didn't pay attention when we gave a lot of this advice, but a lot of them did. And so yes, what they're creating is under a CC BY license, but a lot of them also created in smaller chunks. The other thing you want to do is create and give people editable files. So, a couple of these community colleges said, yep, here's our degree program, 1,000 PDF files. We're like, no. It's like, they look very nice. And if I just want to reuse those and not change them at all, it's exactly what I need. But your license, the Creative Commons Attribution license, gives everybody at Anchorage the legal right to rip those things to shreds and remix them as they see fit. And you can't do that with a lockdown PDF file, right? So we take a lot of time with these guys to say, share the editable original digital video footage, share the audio files, share the, you made a textbook, share the Word document. Don't give us PDF, right? We'll make our own PDFs if we want one. And so, there's just, you got to be thoughtful as you build. And one of it is modularity size. You're absolutely right. Yes.
I have a question about the students' renewable assignments.
Yeah.
Since students start to put into their time and effort, do they need to sign any papers for their work?
Do they need to sign the rights to share their work?
Yeah,
Yes.
like change the chapter 2,
Yes.
improve it or something.
Yeah, so something that we do, we're very poor at in higher education is talking to students about the legal rights that they have to their work. And way too often faculty will keep copies of students' assignments, or this happens all the time in the fine arts where students will produce a painting or a play or something, and there will be a recording of it. And they won't ask students for permission, and they'll use it as examples in the future. The faculty aren't trying to do anything wrong. They're just trying to teach future students using good examples. But all that stuff, the students own the copyright, right? And so we just have to be more thoughtful about it. Some institutions have actually thought about, on admission, talking to students in the orientation and saying, you need to know that everything that you produce at this education institution, you're the copyright holder. Your faculty, in many cases, will ask you to keep a copy of your work to help with the educational process with your peers and future cohorts of students. When they do that, they will be clear and they will ask you to put a Creative Commons license on your work. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It's not required. And so the faculty that are moving to renewable assignments, every single one of them have given students an out. So if you don't want to update chapter 2 in this open textbook, you don't have to. I will give you an alternative assignment that only you and I will see. But the reports from these faculty are that students don't take those outs because the students are excited. Yeah, I want to edit chapter 2 that's going to be used in 15 countries. That's awesome. I want to be part of that. And the other thing that students do with disposable assignments, they just finish the class, they go on to the next class, eventually they get their degree, and they put their degree on their resume and they go get a job. That's okay. What students do with renewable assignments, they actually put it in their resume. They say, I wrote chapter 2 in a intro to biology textbook, and here's the link to it. And the reference letter that I have from my biology advisor, she was the one that gave me the assignment. And so she can vouch for this chapter 2 that I wrote. I'm proud of this. I'm gonna put it on my resume. But you should give students now. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
You're focused on textbooks, but of course what students want today are the additional resources, and so Connect or whatever the publisher has. And the publishers are really into this today. They get students to pay $85 for that, but they only pay $10 to be able to get a print copy of the textbook. So I'm assuming
Little bait and switch, yes.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming, Cable, that what you're talking about would include all those additional resources, all the, videos and quizzes and all the additional things that students want today.
So sometimes the OER does, sometimes it doesn't, and faculty are having to pull those things together. So just to follow up on your example, those of you who teach math probably know about Pearson Mymathlab. It's a very popular, it's exactly one of these resources. You pay $90 a semester. After the semester, you lose your access to it. Right? You stop paying, you lose access. They're great tools. Faculty love them. Students love them. It helps you learn math. That's good. Some math professors said, $90 is still a lot of money. And we don't really like this idea of ripping learning resources out of the hands of learners as they're going through their education career. Wouldn't it be better if you said to students, why don't you keep your textbooks and have a personal library like your professors do so they can look back on the knowledge? Wouldn't it be nice if you could have something like My Open Math, which is the open version of Pearson's Mymathlab, so that nobody's going to, it doesn't cost $90, it's free. And it also happens to be open source software. So if you're a computer scientist here, your math faculty think they can do better, download it, take it, improve the code, right? Or the content. All the content's under a CC BY license. And wouldn't it be nice for your students who are math majors to be able to continue to use the resource and not have to pay $90 every semester? And so more and more math faculty are saying, yeah. Somebody mentioned Elsevier a minute ago. It was math faculty, math professors that launched Boycott Elsevier for math journals because math faculty said, this is nuts. We, the faculty who teach math, are getting grants from the National Science Foundation, which is all, I'll show you how bad it is. It looks like this. People from this morning are like, we haven't seen this yet. This is great. So this is what we do in the United States today. This is what the European Union does and everybody else. Is we take government money, billions of dollars. Just the research alone, funding research alone, is between, it changes every year depending on what Congress does. It hovers between $60 billion to $80 billion a year. That's how much money from US federal grant money goes out to do academic research. There's nothing wrong with that. We need to cure cancer. We need to figure out better battery technology, more efficient solar cell technology. This is good stuff. We should do these things, right? I'm not saying we shouldn't spend the money. We should. But this is what we do today. We spend $80 billion. You guys get a big grant to go cure prostate cancer. Awesome. Good job. Articles get submitted to Elsevier. Copyright gets turned over. Right? So my friend Pat, who just studied pancreatic cancer in her nursing program, no longer owns the research that she wrote. Pat should be really upset about that, by the way. She did all the work, she worked, she got the NIH grant, and she had to turn her copyright over to Elsevier. Elsevier says to her, I will not publish your article unless you sign your copyright over to me. What Pat should say, and faculty are now saying, is no, you cannot have my copyright. And if you, librarians in the room, anybody in the library? Yep. So librarians know that SPARC, which is part of the American Research Libraries, has an author addendum agreement that faculty can sign and send to Elsevier and say, no, I give you, the publisher, rights to publish, rights to distribute, but I, the faculty member, the researcher, keep the copyright. Thank you very much. You don't like my terms, you don't publish my article. Okay, but this is what happens. Most faculty turn their copyright over. Now you own nothing. Okay? Public owns nothing either. We pay for it. I pay for it. You pay for it. We're federal taxpayers. Gets accepted in the journal. Articles get published. They're locked down, right? The Elsevier Journal charges librarians, put your hands up, Ken. What's your total journal budget in this library? Do you know?
Probably about 1.5 million.
1.5 million?
Wow.
You pay a lot of money for journals, and so does Fairbanks, and so does Juneau, and so does the University of Washington. We're all paying over and over and over for publicly funded research that we already paid for with our first $80 billion. Okay? Libraries have to subscribe to that if you want access. I was talking to some of the librarians this morning. Your library here at Anchorage has subscriptions to journals that Fairbanks doesn't have access to. So Pat's research, which your library is lucky enough to be able to afford the $10,000 a year subscription to journal Nature where Pat published, Fairbanks doesn't have that journal. So even though an Alaska faculty member did the research, Fairbanks can't read it. And it's against the law for Pat to make a copy and send it because she doesn't hold the copyright anymore. She'll get sued and lose. And then, so what do you get? Public has limited, really no rights. Pat has no rights. She didn't own anything. Elsevier. What do you get? How are you going to cure pancreatic cancer if nobody can read it? What if there's some really smart doctors in Fairbanks who are onto something, and if they could only read that research? Has anybody ever hit a paywall with a journal, and do you see how much they cost to get access to one article? It's right around $35 to $40.
Some of the faculty
To read one article.
pay to get published.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and
So-
and sometimes our students pay that because they don't realize that they can get to it through our databases. You know, they'll say, "Well, I just paid for that." What?
So I tell you what happens all the time. So if you're not angry already about this publishing model, this will make you really angry. What happens all the time is Pat goes through this model. She does her research, goes all the way through. And Pat will contact Elsevier and say, so thanks for publishing my article. Super excited about that. It's going to help me get tenure. I would like to, I'm not the copyright holder anymore, so I actually have to ask permission of you, the new copyright holder. I would like to make copies of this article every semester. So now we're outside of fair use because Pat wants to use it semester after semester after semester in her course back. So fair use no longer covers her. She says, I want to make copies every, and you know what Elsevier says?
No.
It says absolutely not. You want to continue to get access, your library will continue to subscribe. Right? That's the world we live in. Good news is, make one change and it all gets better. All you have to do right here at the funding is say, if you take this money, it's got an open license on it. The rest of the process stays exactly the same. You don't have to change anything else. So now what governments are starting to do is they're saying, if you take it, you have to share. Same research gets done. Pat still gets her $6 million grant to do pancreatic research. Articles still get submitted. They still get accepted. And Pat can still publish anywhere she wants. She can publish in Nature. She can publish in Cell. But if she wants to publish in Nature, she tells Nature, look, I don't have a choice. Like my funder required me to put an open license or at least give free access. So free is not as good as open. Open is free plus the legal permissions to reuse, revise, remix, retain, and redistribute, the 5 R's. Free is just free. Most open access journals are just free. Real open access journals, like Public Library of Science, is free and open. Why is that important? Some of you might be saying, who cares? I'm not going to like rewrite somebody's academic article. The reason it matters is that, so I'm going to pick on somebody else. What do you teach?
Justice.
Justice, okay. So if I said to you, you're in the law school?
We don't have a law school in Alaska.
Wow. That doesn't seem very just.
I'm trying to get the Ted Stevens Memorial Hall of Justice built, but it's slow going.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't work very well. But I've got some oil companies that could do some work on your house for you. So, or at least pay for the work on your house. So, see, we pay attention to the Lord for you. Now I totally lost my train of thought because all I can picture is Ted Stevens. So let me just finish this out. You still publish where you want to publish. The difference is now it's open access, right? And that means anybody can read it. So if the goal was to cure pancreatic cancer, is it better to just let the 5% of the global population that's rich that can afford that journal read about pancreatic cancer? Or is it just possible that somebody in the 95% might have a decent idea about how to cure pancreatic cancer? Right? So I'll tell you a really quick story about open access. I know we're talking about OER, but I've slipped a little bit into open access. There was a...
I hate to shut down everything, but we do. I want to give you a chance to take a break before we have to reconvene.
All right, last story.
So.
Last story, because this one's too good. I don't behave and I don't follow schedules. I'm sorry.
Hey, we can stay. Well, you can stay till you're supposed to be downstairs.
What is that? 1:30?
We have to. You're back on the docket at 1:30.
Oh, piece of cake.
So now, for the people in this room, feel free to walk out.
Yeah, feel free to walk out.
Because I know we were scheduled till 1.
So here's why open access matters. There was a high school student. Drawing a blank on the dude's name right now. High school student. He's in 10th or 11th grade biology. It was an AP biology course. This guy's a good student. The biology teacher, because it was an AP course, said your assignment this quarter, high school student, remember? Your assignment is to find an existing medical test, analyze it. I want you to know, figure out how effective it is, how much it costs, and how much time it takes to get the test results back. I want you to find a test, and I want you to redesign the test, and I want you to improve all those metrics. I want you to bring the cost down. I want you to reduce the time it takes to get results back, and I want you to increase the efficacy and the accuracy of the test. You can't give that assignment to high school students. It's a ridiculous assignment to get to high school students. Right? But nevertheless, it was an AP class, and they wanted to challenge the students, and teacher didn't really think they could do it, but give them a challenge. So this kid goes to the library, natural place to start, goes to the high school library, and the high school librarian says, gosh, we can't afford any academic journals. And this kid wanted to work on pancreatic cancer because his family has pancreatic cancer. His dad had it, his grandpa had it. There's a history in the family. And he was worried that he might get it. And so he decided he's going to look at the test for pancreatic cancer. Librarian says, we can't afford any journals. You're going to have to go to the university. So he goes to the university library. Research librarian said, yeah, no problem. We'll research. He does the research. He finds out that pancreatic tests today cost between $300 and $400. They take about 3 or 4 days to get results back. And there's something like 60% accurate, 65%, something like that. And I hear that and I think, and by the way, it's a blood test. You have to do a finger stick. So I got to prick somebody, which some people don't like being pricked and having blood taken. Makes them faint. That's not good. So he gets these stats, and I listen to that and I think pinprick, less than a week, $400. My insurance is probably going to cover it anyway. What do I care? That sounds like a reasonable test. 60%. I got faith in my doctor that they'll have other tests that will triangulate the results, and I'll be okay. This kid didn't think that was good enough, so he goes off and he reads everything that the library has. Turns out they don't have very many journals because they've been having to cut journals. He goes on to Google and he starts doing research, and he hits paywall after paywall after paywall. It's a high school kid. He doesn't have $40 to read each one of these articles. And you can't even read the article to see if you need the article because they won't even let you look at it unless you give them $40 in your credit card. And so he doesn't look at any of that research. He is solely limited to open access journals because he's a high school kid with no money, right? So he goes back to the library and he says, can you just point me at where are the open access journals? And so the librarian says, yeah, no problem. What you want to do is go to DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals. And here it is. This is all the open access journals on the planet in one nice spot. And you can come here, you can do keyword searches, and you can type in pancreatic cancer in the Directory of Open Access Journals. He says, okay, that's the only place I can do my research. I'm all in. He goes in, and from the research he does here alone in free open access journals, this kid, not making this up, redesigned the pancreatic test. It now takes 5 minutes. It is over 99% accurate. No more pinprick. He can do a saliva swab with a Q-tip inside the mouth. So now people who don't like blood are much happier.
Oh, but all those gag reflex people.
No, it's not the throat. It's just the inside of the cheek because he just needs a little DNA, right? And here's the beauty. Remember the test cost $300 or $400? It now costs 5 cents. It's a high school kid. High school kid plus open access journals totally redefined pancreatic cancer testing. He got the Intel Innovation Award. The President of the United States, head of the White House, gave him a science award. This kid is still in high school, and all the big pharmaceutical companies are literally giving him $1 million job offers, saying, just leave high school and come work for us right now. And the kid's parents are saying, no, he's going to stay in high school, and he's going to go to college, and then he can go work for you.
Take the money.
And so now, yes, this was a kid in the United States who came from a middle-class home, and he was lucky enough to be in AP courses. But there are examples after examples of, somebody in India that has no resources, but they're reading open access journals, and these people are doing exactly the same thing. And so if we want to solve climate change, we want to solve cancer, you want to solve things, you open stuff up, right? This is the way to do it. And I think we're out of time. Yeah.
What about tenure process?
Oh,
The
yeah. So
fact
we talked about that this
some
morning.
Universities require certain journals
Yeah.
or peer reviewed, and I realize open access.
It's all peer reviewed.
It is.
Yep.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that all universities are going along with that with their tenure processes.
Yeah. So I'll say this as nice as I can. University promotion and tenure committees need to take a step back, and they need to ask themselves, what is promotion and tenure really supposed to be evaluating? And when they do that, the conclusions they all come to is that what we're evaluating in the faculty member is whether or not this faculty member is having positive and meaningful impact on their field, on their students' learning and on the community and society within which they live and exist, and which is why we evaluate research, teaching, and service in promotion and tenure. And so if those are what you're evaluating, if I can come to you and say, I've published in a journal, and it's an open access journal, and the journal gives me metrics on how many people have downloaded my article, and my journals, and I get that from the closed access journals as well. And these journals over here that very few people have access to, on average, I'm getting 1,500 reads per article. And on my open access journals, we know this from research, they get 15 times as much traffic. And so impact, what do you care about? Do we care about a particular journal name and the prestige of it? Or do we care about how many people in my field read it and how many people are citing it? We also know that you get cited more when you're in an open journal. Why? Because people can actually read it. And not just read it, but what's your name again?
Alan.
Alan. So Alan's my new friend because I'm all about justice too. And Alan, because Alan knows I'm faculty at University of Washington, Alan's up here, teaches justice. When Alan finds a new interesting journal article about justice, when it's in an open journal, Alan can tweet it with the link.
Right.
And Alan can send me an email with the whole article in it or the link, and I can read it. And Alan and I can have a conversation about that article and debate it and talk about whether or not it's any good and what it means. If it's in a closed journal that only I have access to at the University of Washington, and unfortunately he lost access up here in the last round of budget cuts, it's actually against the law for me to send him a copy of that article, even if I copy and paste it in an email. That's unfortunate. Alan and I don't get to have that conversation now.
So that's part of also the educational campaign that you're engaging in with Creative Commons when you're working with universities. Okay, good.
Yes, we work on open access. We work on open educational resources. We also work in the GLAM sector, which is galleries, libraries, archives, and museums.
Yeah.
So if you go to Google and type in Creative Commons GLAM, you'll see what we're doing with museums all around the planet. They're starting to open up the metadata on their archives. Libraries are opening up the metadata, putting it in the public domain so people can build cool new apps on phones for accessing library resources that libraries don't have the technical expertise to do or the resources. I'm talking with the National Archives right now. They very much want their everything in the National Archives to be used in your classrooms. And so they're doubling down on making sure that everything that's in the public domain is properly marked. And anything that they're pretty sure they've got the legal rights to put into the public domain, they're using CC0 to do that. And then they're on their portal called DocsTeach, where educators can upload into the National Archives. They're considering, it's in committee right now, but they're talking about requiring when you upload something to the National Archives, they're just going to require you to dedicate your work to the public domain if you want it to be in the National Archives. If you don't care if it's the National Archives, you can do something else. Yeah.
Love the articles, etc. Journal, blah, 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 blah. But you also need to create the PowerPoints that go with this, for example, or the multiple choice test, or the extra ancillary things that you get with a regular textbook.
Yes.
And I did this with Lotus 1, 2, 3 and made acetate, so I know the life-changing amount of time it takes to do that.
Yeah.
And I was so glad to see the textbooks came out with that. So, along with all of these textbooks.
Hang on. Before people leave, could you fill out your evaluation forms?
So with all this open access stuff, is there open access ancillary stuff that goes with all this nice, wonderful, brand new material?
With a lot of it, there is, yes.
Okay.
But not all of it. But where it doesn't exist, what faculty do is they revise and remix. Now what that takes is time.
Yeah.
And so when I was sitting down with your provost yesterday, I said, what you need to do if you want to see this at your institution is you need to ask for volunteers, only people that want to do it. You shouldn't force anybody to do it. And for the faculty that want to move to OER and want to have an open textbook and open curriculum and all the ancillary resources, what they need is release time. They need research library support to help find stuff. They need instructional design support from his team to help redesign the course. And they essentially need somebody to go out and do the grunt work and go do the search and discovery of this stuff, and then bring back to the faculty the set of resources that you've asked for so that you can do the final review and decide what's good and what's not.
Okay.
And that's what universities are doing now for their faculty.
What did Gingrich say when you mentioned
He did say, yeah.
We'll be having some follow-up conversations